Hi everyone, this is Jill Inkrott-Smith, and I'd like to share with you what I've learned about Watson Health and the use of artificial intelligence in healthcare. Before we get into too much detail though, let's start with a story. Let's say that after getting your MBA, you decide you also want to be a doctor. So you go to med school for 4 years, complete a 3-year residency, and then you're a medical oncologist. One of your first patients is a woman with breast cancer, and because you're a good doctor, you want to ensure that you have the best possible treatment plan for her. So you want to practice something called evidence-based medicine, which basically means that you read all of the latest clinical trial data, the latest journal articles to come up with the best treatment plan. So to do that, you go to PubMed, which is a search engine provided by the National Institutes of Health, which has access to hundreds of medical journals. You put in your search criteria, and what comes out is a list of 160 journal articles for you to read to determine the best treatment plan. Now, in this example, you could have had better search criteria to limit this list, but it's still going to be a lot of articles, and keep in mind that this is only one of your very many patients. What the main point is that there is just an overwhelming amount of healthcare data out there for physicians and providers to process. There are 8,000 new research papers published every single day, and then you can tack on all of the individual health data. So for just one person, if you took his electronic health record and then added on his genetic data, and then added on data from his Fitbit fitness tracker, that person can create 6 terabytes of healthcare data in a lifetime. Clearly too much for one human mind to process. So this is an area where computers and technology can help physicians to make decisions and to make recommendations for patients. But a key is that the computer just can't act like a search engine. The computer needs to help with actual decision making, and that's where artificial intelligence can come in. What is artificial intelligence? Essentially, it's getting a computer or computer system to act like a human. So for example, it can do human-like things like natural language processing. That's what we see with Siri and Alexa, where a human can speak in English, the computer can understand it, make sense of it, and then respond back in English or whatever language is being used. Another key part of AI is the decision-making capability. So it can understand a question or a problem, pull lots of sources of data, and then come up with a reasonable recommendation or answer. For most people, their first exposure to AI was probably IBM's Watson computer, AI computer, and it probably happened in 2011 when Watson appeared on Jeopardy and competed against 2 former grand champions. To get ready for this, IBM taught Watson again that natural language piece, had Watson read thousands of books and scroll through Wikipedia, so it would be ready when Alex Trebek asked a question. It could understand the question, go through all that data, and make an educated guess. And ended up what happening, this picture was a little early in the competition, but Watson pretty much destroyed its human competition in Jeopardy. And it was a hallmark day for AI and for IBM in particular. Now, IBM's future was not in game shows. Obviously, it wanted to take artificial intelligence to new areas, and one of those areas was healthcare, and particularly oncology. In 2012, IBM had a partnership formed with the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York. And the goal of the partnership was to come up with a tool that would help physicians to come up with the best possible treatment plans for patients with cancer. What came out of that partnership was Watson for Oncology, which was launched in 2015. It's an app, so a hospital can pay for a licensing fee to the app, which then runs on a tablet. And here's how it works. So for Watson, a physician would upload a patient's medical record, which could also include that patient's genetic data as an example. So first you get the patient data in there. One of the benefits of the partnership with Memorial Sloan Kettering was that MSK provided a lot of expertise. So its doctors provided treatment algorithms and logic for how to treat cancer patients. And then Watson continues to learn. So whereas you had 160 journal articles to read, Watson can read 25 million journal articles in 1 week, so it's constantly updating. In addition to journal articles, it's also keeping tabs on new clinical trials or new drugs that may have been approved by the FDA. So once this information is in there, particularly the patient information that's added, a physician with one click can get a recommended treatment plan from Watson. Watson will provide both a recommended treatment plan as well as other potential treatment plans to consider, and it will also point out treatment plans to avoid. Watson has seen some success in oncology, and one example is at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. The folks at UNC were skeptical of Watson, so they did a study. They looked back at 1,000 patients for whom their tumor board had provided a treatment recommendation. Basically, a tumor board is just where your oncologist, your surgeon, your radiologist, your nutritionist, all the people treating that patient come together to figure out the best possible treatment plan. So for 1,000 patients, they looked at what the tumor board recommended and then compared it to what Watson recommended when given the same information. And Watson's recommendation matched the tumor board's 99% of the time. Another interesting finding was that for 300 patients, Watson also recommended that additional treatment plan for consideration that was something that the tumor board didn't come up with. So what does all this mean? What are the benefits? Well, one benefit is just simply greater peace of mind for physicians. They're making life or death recommendations, so if they're getting a match from Watson, they can feel better and more confident when conveying that treatment plan to a patient. Another benefit goes back to those 300 patients. Typically in that study, what was found for those 300 patients was Watson was aware of a new clinical trial that the physicians just hadn't heard about yet. So it was a new opportunity for a patient who might be running out of options to try something new to extend her life or even save her life. On a broader scale, as you saw, physicians are pretty busy. So if they can free up some of that time that would be spent going through tons of journal articles, then perhaps they can see more patients. And that's becoming increasingly important as there are shortages of physicians and there are increasing numbers of patients who have to be seen. And then lastly, thinking about small practices or practices in rural areas. At UNC, they have a tumor board. They have a whole team of experts that can come together, put their heads together, and come up with the best treatment plan. If you have an oncologist working by himself, doesn't have that benefit, but Watson could be that additional team helping to provide more perspectives to come up with the best plan. IBM does have other Watson Health products beyond just Watson for oncology. I'll just mention one more of them, which is the Care Manager. If you think back to our module on electronic medical records, the panacea was the electronic health record, where in one place you'd have EMRs from the hospital and from the family practice and from the insurance companies, and then you'd add in data from the Fitbit and so forth, all in one place. Watson Care Manager essentially does that same thing. It's a cloud-based app where this information from the individual patient can be uploaded and then added in with all that latest journal and drug information to then provide a treatment plan to the physician who's using it. So very similar in terms of reaching that electronic health record and then using it for treatment recommendations. All of this sounds pretty good, but of course there are risks. As with any sort of information technology, there's the risk of hacking. So IBM in particular, they de-identify data that's shared in the cloud. They also have strict security protocols in place to keep data safe, but there's still always going to be a risk of hacking that very personal healthcare data. There are risks that are not specific to AI too. So in the area of genetics, how is that data used when it is shared? So if you're a person who a genetic test shows has a predisposition to Parkinson's, if the insurance company were to use that and say increase your premiums because you're expected to be high cost or even deny you coverage, that's clearly an issue. As we've seen in other areas of AI, there's the risk for human jobs to be eliminated. Pharmacy is one area that would be at risk. Pharmacy is a lot about drug interactions, drug-disease interactions. It's a very algorithmic kind of decision-making, which lends itself to AI and computer systems. And any presentation about AI would not be complete without the risk of the Terminator movies coming true and computers becoming smarter than us, taking over the world, and then looking to kill all of us. So, okay. For things like Watson Health that are very specific uses of AI, typically this risk of computer overlords is not brought up. It's more when there's general AI developed, so just developing a robot who acts like a human. But there are some very smart people, Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, who have expressed the need for there to be more regulatory oversight, guidelines, and just watching over what's happening with AI development to make sure that we don't actually make the computers smarter than us. Some questions for you to consider through this week as you think about AI and healthcare is, would you be comfortable if your doctor used Watson for Oncology or Watson Care Manager or another AI application for your care or the care of a loved one, and why or why not? One thing that I didn't have a lot of time to cover in this particular presentation were other AI applications for healthcare beyond Watson Health. So what other applications have you seen, and what are their benefits and risk? And then lastly, just what are your thoughts on AI overall? Should there be regulatory oversight, and what would that oversight look like? Thank you very much for taking the time to watch my presentation. I hope that you found it informative and learned something new. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing your comments and your questions in the discussion forum this week. So again, thank you very much for watching, and look forward to chatting with you more about AI in healthcare.